Hello and welcome to Worklife Matters. I'm Siv Ngesis, your host, and I'm excited to be bringing you candid stories, practical strategies, and awesome insights as we chat to a range of cross-section professionals, entrepreneurs, and startups, and more, to find out about how their work life can matter to you. Today, I'm speaking to Gareth Leck and Rael Levitt, both of whom are comeback kids. I hope you enjoy. Gareth Leck, CEO and part of the brains behind 100%ly proudly South African company called Joe Public.
That's it. That's me.
That's you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Kenilworth, in the southern suburbs of Cape Town, on the wrong side of the tracks.
Okay. What schools did you go to?
I went to Sachs Junior, then I went to Westerford, which I really didn't enjoy, and then I changed. I went to Rondebosch High, and I loved Rondebosch.
Boys.
Rondebosch Boys, yeah, I loved Rondebosch. Great school.
Cool. And then you studied where? University?
I studied at. It's funny because I was one of the top graphic design students at school. I got an A, high grade A, and I was one of the worst accountancy students at school. I got a D for accountancy. Mm-hmm. This is a bit of an ironic story. Mm-hmm. And then because of societal pressures, and this idea that you have to go and do finance to make money, I chose to go and do a BCom at UCT. Which I literally hated, almost every minute of it. I managed to get through it. I passed. I got in to do a GDA and realized that I can't be an accountant. And then I decided to change into creative field, and I did a postgraduate diploma in marketing and advertising at AAA advertising school in Cape Town. Right. So I finished. I did like a fourth year. And then I started working, probably I was about 25 when I started working in advertising.
Right. Tell us about this company that you created that was in trouble and something happened, and then now look at it.
Okay,
How did you start it? What happened? Tell us about the story of it. We have a good 5 minutes for it.
Okay, so we had this idea to start an ad agency called Takeaway Advertising, where what happens is you walk in to like a takeaway restaurant and you buy ads off a menu.
Oh.
And we got really excited about the idea. I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but you know what? I was earning 2,000 Rand a month at the time. I was like my second year advertising, and we literally just quit our jobs overnight and we started Joe Public Takeaway Advertising. And that was in 1998. And then what happened was that was very successful for about 2 years, but it wasn't that sustainable, and I think the quality of our work kind of just declined. And then we wanted to transition to become a more traditional agency out of takeaway advertising. And we were actually approached by a big holding company called FCB, IPG and FCB, and they actually bought us out. So we sold our business in 2001 to FCB. And then we went on this journey of working with a multinational for the next 8 years, made a bit of money, not a lot of money, and absolutely hated it. And then we actually bought the business back in 2009, and we actually had to resign. So we resigned from the business in 2009, which was really, really scary. And with that threat, the guys sold the business back to us. And then at that stage, it was scary because that was when we were technically insolvent. Mm-hmm. And then we had that breakdown. And then from there, we had to go and find our reason for being, our business purpose, which is all about how do we grow our people, our clients, and our country. How do we become the fertile soil that grows our people, clients, and country. And then that was 2009. And then the rest is history. So we grew from 30 people in about 2009 to about we're currently about a 300 people man agency. We've got offices in Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town. And as I say, the turning point was when we really wanted to focus on why we exist as a business, and that was all about finding our business purpose. Spent a bit of work on that, and then we've literally built the agency around that business purpose. All our new companies we opened, all the tools we put in place, the kind of people we employ, our culture, everything has been designed around that. And as I said, the turning point of that was in 2009 when we had this complete breakdown, and we said, let's just relook everything and look at how do we operate the business in a very different way from where we were operating before. I'm
a huge patriot. I think plowing back into South Africa or your own country should be a no-brainer. Why isn't every company doing that? If you have a company and you're not giving back to the country, for me, you have failed. In my eyes, in my humble opinion, I'm a CEO of my own company.
Well,
you have to give back.
Look, I think a lot of people think, well, if you're paying taxes, you're giving back. But I think we took it to the next level, and that's why we've actually got pillars that say we need to focus on growth of our people, growth of our clients, and growth of our country. And we've put goals and measurables in all those pillars that we track on an annual basis. So but obviously, to be honest, the way you give back to your country is by building a successful company, because obviously you create more jobs, and then investing in your people to make sure your people can be the best they can be, because then they can be successful in their own rights and make a contribution to our country. So that's really, we put our focus on our people to make our people better, because if we do that really well, we can grow our clients' business, and that helps the economy, and we can also hire more people, we can pay more taxes. So that's kind of our ecosystem of how we do it.
And how important is it to make sure that your staff are happy?
Happy is a relative word, because I don't think our staff are happy all the time. If I'm honest, myself included. I think what's most important is to give your staff, an environment that is. I mean, ours is all about committing to producing world-class creative output, because to me that really stimulates them in their career, and then and give them a lot of support and a lot of training in that regard, because if you do that, they're going to excel in their own careers. And I think ultimately that's going to give them a sense of joy and accomplishment when they achieve it, and it's going to build their careers. They're going to be more successful, support their families. So in that regard, I think that's what's going to make them happy. But our environment's not an easy environment. It's a tough environment, but people that are striving to be excellent in our environment and do achieve that are very, I believe they're very fulfilled. And that's what I think is probably most important.
A question that I don't think I've asked anyone when we talk about business is, how important do you think your parenting was? Like how you were parented by your parents? Because I grew up in a household where my parents would, my mother was a principal teacher, my dad worked for housing, so they always worked for someone. So the thought of having a business was never in my foresight or ever. But how important do you think your parents were to your success?
I think everyone's different. I mean, at a very age in my career, I realized personally that to work as hard as I was working, because I was working like 12-hour days and I was earning like $2-3 grand a month. That wasn't like 90s. It was a long time ago. I just knew that it wasn't sustainable for me to achieve the kind of life I wanted, and I just felt I have to choose a path where I'm more in control of my own destiny, and I can get better returns on my effort. So I came to that conclusion myself. My father, worked as in a kind of corporate job his whole life. My mother was a nurse. I saw how they worked very, very hard. And I mean, look, we were privileged in the greater context of South Africa, definitely, but it was not an easy life, So I think I came to the conclusion myself, if I have to think about it. But I had very, very supportive and loving parents. I was lucky enough to have an amazing, that kind of level of emotional support was there, which maybe gave me a sense of self-belief in myself. So I think that played a role for me personally. But I mean, I've also got, I've got colleagues that have come out of, really, really difficult circumstances, and I won't mention names, but abusive, almost, low level, almost like poverty, and incredibly successful. So they've turned very dark situations into, they've turned it around for themselves and become very successful.
That's a comeback.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've seen, and a lot of the most successful people do come from nothing, and they've turned it. They've turned that situation in their lives. They've turned it around completely. So I think it's different for everybody. But I don't think every entrepreneur comes from a damaged background or a terrible background. If you look at someone like Bill Gates, I think his history was relatively normal, and he's probably one of the wealthiest guys in the world. I'm not sure about like a Bezos, and I know Musk had a bit of a difficult background. So I think Elon
was born in Pretoria. It's very difficult.
Exactly. So I'm just saying, to answer your question, I think there's probably a trend that yes, a lot of people that have made it big come out of really difficult circumstances, but I don't think it's always the case from what I've sort of seen as well.
Best lesson you teach your kids when it comes to business?
I think you kind of lead by example. So I mean, that's always the case. If you want to If you don't want your kids to swear, then you shouldn't swear yourself. It becomes very hypocritical. So, I just try and, I try and, I think what they've probably seen with me is that I work very hard. Nothing's come easy for me. And that I'm doing something that I find meaningful. That's probably and I think you teach by example. So
Why are you successful? Because for me, you said something interesting before we began. You said you are 50 odd years old and you're sick and tired of guck and bullshit. It's just about being authentic, straightforward, and real. And for me, I think that's the most beautiful place to be able to share information with people who are involved in business. Because I think a lot of people like to, put all the sugar coatings and all these things, but a lot of people who are starting a business need to hear the authentic, real, harsh truths.
I think you start with being honest with yourself. And honest with your business. So a lot of businesses don't even know why they exist. A lot of people don't know why they exist. So most people don't want to ask themselves those questions.
Yep.
So I think it starts there. And I think that's a job you need to do every single day. So one of my mantras right now is radical responsibility. So when anything goes wrong in the business, I don't always get it right. I try to look at myself first and say, what did I do wrong in this situation for us to be in the situation? What could I have done better? Okay. I don't think a lot of people do that. I think it's a very, very scary place to be if you want to talk about being authentic. It's much easier to blame. You can blame so many. You can blame your clients, you can blame the government, you can blame the weather. But I always say, look at yourself first. So I know a lot of people that are struggling, and I wonder, how hard are you actually working to not struggle? We work we're still working almost sometimes 7 days a week. Myself, my partners, my business partners, we're in the trenches. We work freaking hard. And I think we are very, very honest with ourselves a lot of the time, and we want to hold each other to account. I don't think there's enough of that, but I think most importantly, you need to have a very strong reason to why you are doing what you're doing. And if you're doing it to make money, a lot of people do make a lot of money, but how sustainable is that? And how enjoyable is that? How meaningful is that if you're just doing it for the money? And I think, and just to end that off, I think a lot of companies that operate like that, the people working for those companies, on some kind of deep level, they know that. They know that they're just pieces of a puzzle to make a whole lot of money for certain people. And I don't think you build successful businesses like that.
So you're a CEO.
Yeah.
How is your staff holding you accountable? Because if you're making the example of government, I think we should take some guilt as everyday
100%.
Taxpayers for not holding them accountable.
I agree with
so
that.
we've failed there, and we need to be honest about that. We need to be accountable about that we're not asking them for more to do better. But let's go back to business. How are your staff holding you accountable as a CEO?
We have very stringent KPIs, goals, and our executive holds each other to account. So we actually have annual executive meetings, and everybody sits in the room and is lovingly honest about the other executives and what they have or haven't done.
Okay.
And we actually score each other.
All right.
We literally give ourselves scores, which people hate being measured and hate being scored, but we believe it's the only way to, and what we say is it's room for growth. So we'll say, in these areas you've delivered, these areas you haven't delivered, your room for growth is 15%. And we think these are the kind of things you should be doing differently in the next cycle. So we literally sit together as an executive team, and we hold each other to account in a very honest way. So that's what we do from an executive point of view, and then that filters down to the entire organization, because the company's grown to quite a big size now. For an ad agency group, it's about 300 people. So obviously you've got to have a lot of systems in place to manage that amount of people when you're aiming to deliver world-class or best in market creative outputs. So we have a lot of those kind of measures in place, to answer your question, to hold each other to account.
So not every business would be able to be a comeback kid after what you guys have been through, right? What did you guys think you did differently that other companies didn't do?
I think we were very honest with ourselves. We said we can't exist to make money and win awards. And then we came up with a business purpose. We developed a business purpose in 2009, I think it was 2009. And that business purpose is all about how do we grow our people, our clients, and our country. So the big turning point for us, and that's why I was talking about sometimes you need to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. We had a breakdown because we kind of were nowhere. And then we said, look, listen, there has to be a higher order. We have to look for a higher order way of operating to be successful. And that was our turning point as a business.
So when you were at your worst in this business, did people treat you differently when you were down and out compared to how they are now that you are, one of the best in the world?
To be perfect, I saw that question in the sheet that you guys sent me. And to be honest, I wasn't really that worried about that personally. I was just more worried about, like running a business is like raising a child. I mean, it's a great analogy, and I'm very emotionally attached to Joe Public. I always joke I've got more control over Joe Public than I do over my 2 kids.
How old are your kids?
My daughter's 21 and my son is 17.
You're not supposed to have control over that age.
Exactly. So I joke about it, but I mean, it's a bit like, I really felt responsibility to Joe Public, and my energy and my business partners, I've been working with my business partner Pepe Marais now for 25 years. I think we were just all in, and all the energy was focused on how do we rescue our child almost, and how do we recover from this. So I wasn't really that worried about the market perception, other than our brand, because that's how you market your business. So it was how do we protect the brand. I wasn't too worried about what people were saying or weren't saying.
Did any luck get involved? Did any luck get in there about you being successful? Any luck? Because they always say sometimes we need some luck.
I know that's a bit of a cliche. I honestly think we weren't that lucky. I think we got some amazing people join our teams. I think we've been very lucky to get amazing partners. But I think we kind of earned that luck, and then it's mainly been about hard work. It's mainly been about we may make mistakes on the daily, all of us, myself, and then we're honest about it, and we recover from it. I think it's more about that, and I think it's also about as I say, I think that you need a North Star. Any company needs a real North Star or a business purpose, and it's about how do you constantly pull yourself back when you're going off course, so you stay on course, you stay on purpose. So that's probably played the biggest roles in us getting to where we are now.
What did you say to your 25-year-old self?
There's a few things I'd say. Try and have more fun on the journey. I think we all take things too seriously. Try and have more fun, because when you're having more fun, you're more creative. And often the worst thing that happens to you, and I know I read Steve Jobs' book, and he said the same thing, the worst thing that happens to you is often the best thing. We say it quite often because our turning point was when we went through our darkest days, and we really had to apply ourselves to how do we recover from this. So I would say to people that are starting a business, don't lose faith. If things are dark, often it's meant to be that way. And but you must use that sort of darkness to find the light, and be very resilient, but use it and try and take lessons out of it, because they're there for a reason.
So there's a big culture of startups left, right, and center. Every kid wants to have the new Uber or the next big thing. What advice do you have for people, and when to know to give up and call it quits? When do you think is the time when you're like, hey, we're in Kakia?
If you ask, well, our journey was we've never given up. Sometimes I think everybody has their days when they want to give up. If you really believe in what you do, what your business is about, and that's why I said it needs. This is the point. It needs to. If it's about money, you at some point you're going to give up if you're not making money. And yes, you need money to survive. I mean, it's like your oxygen. I get it. But if you really believe in something, it's really important to you. And that's why I say it's a bit like a child. Am I going to give up on my daughter or my son? Like, I'd never do that. I will do what it takes to be a good father and try and support them. Not answering your question directly, but I don't have a really good reference point because we've never given up. Obviously, it gets to a point where you don't have the capital, your idea isn't really resonating with the market, you don't have the right people around you, and it becomes too much and it doesn't seem a viable proposition, kill it. And actually, as I said, we have had businesses in Joe Public that have failed. But they were products within a greater sort of a suite of products where we've given up on a certain products because we don't believe they're going to work. But we just haven't. We've just refused to give up.
And lastly, not enough people talk about cutting away cancers in companies. Have you ever had to say, this person's the wrong person for my business, and cutting them?
Absolutely.
And how important is that?
Absolutely critical. And that's the hard part of being, and that's what I always laugh about, because people often want the titles and they want the paychecks, but they don't want to do the dirty work. And that's part of the job. You can't avoid that. It's unavoidable, and I think what you want to do it is with a sense of compassion, with humanity, and often the irony of the whole situation is it often serves the person, because a lot of people that are in that state of being where it's toxic or cancerous are actually, it's not the right environment for them, but they're too scared to move on because it's a scary prospect not to have a job. But I've often seen the people that's happened with, that I always try and remain on good terms with, they end up in a much better position further down the track anyway. So often it serves them.
Well, I look forward to working with your child often again, because I've worked with you guys a lot, and I look forward to seeing more of the things that you guys are doing. And it's so good to see a comeback story like yours. Thanks for a great chat. Learned a lot about business, about family, and you're quite a patriot. I look forward to seeing what you can do for the rest of the country.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Yeah, and I think we've put out in the press, we've just turned 25, and we are looking forward to the next 25 years. We've actually committed to pay for 25 creative bursaries for the next 25 years. We put that out on our feed, and so from a patriot point of view, we're absolutely committed to giving back to our country for the next 25 years.
Thanks, man.
All good. Thank you very much.
After that episode, it feels like I've just watched a Rocky or a Creed film. Never give up, keep on fighting. You never know what will happen. Check you on the next episode of Work-Life Matters.